didn't just come to talk about beer, although one could.
Totally.
Great to see you guys. I keep waiting for a record from you guys that I can say I don't like, so I don't just sound like that idiot fanboy, but I legitimately do like every record. There's been a lot of talk about how much the band has changed. Having your roots partly in black metal, going back to the early 90s, what is black metal about Enslaved in 2018?
I think the atmosphere is what you retain from those old days, that's still there, even though songwriting is maybe a little bit different than musicianship, arrangements and all that. Last year we did a rendition of our first album at the Beyond the Gates Festival. We did the whole thing. We still play old stuff during our live sets. So we live and breathe, like I would say, our entire catalog.
I don't think we will ever travel completely away from that concept. We're still extreme metal, and there will always be dynamics between the harsh and, shall we say, the beautiful or mellow. For me personally, that's really important in music. It's supposed to be emotional, and it's supposed to be a reflection of your own mind, And everything is not completely horrible. It's not just black and white.
The other thing that you guys mentioned about the making of this record, which really struck me, was a sense of taking a big risk.
The change of members, like in the middle of the whole process, where there was a moment there where everything could have been postponed and done like the sensible thing, like normal people would do, put things on hold and see if we find a keyboard player who can sing. And that moment passed, and it's gonna work out.
We basically said, yeah, just fuck it. We're gonna make an album.
Apart from obviously the addition of a new member, which I can appreciate is a considerable change, was there anything different for you with this record than previous Enslaved records?
Well, yeah, the arrangements, of course, the vocal arrangements. I basically had to do all that by myself because Håkon wasn't involved in the process until we actually started the recordings. So he actually went into the studio and did his things weeks after we finished. I think the whole band kind of stepped up a little bit, because we had to.
Well, speaking of the new guy, you guys have talked about how positive it's been, and it dawned on me, there's got to be some cons to having a guy that wasn't, I think, even born when the first record came out. What have been the pros and the cons of having such a young new member in the band?
He's positive.
No, he's very positive.
Energetic, and I mean, we're old farts to him, really. I mean, I could have been his father. Kato could have been his grandfather or something. Of course, his musical skills are amazing too.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy. Usually, nobody wants to be the keyboard player, This guy grew up by his father played him, Deep Purple, and he was like, "This is it. This is what I'm going to do. I want to be a keyboard player."
I want to be John Lord when I grow up.
Yes, which is
really
rare,
I think a potential con would have been if we got like a young guy. Sometimes you meet new bands that have success very fast, and they have a bit of an annoying outlook on things for us who feel that we've like worked our way through the grades and everything.
Yeah.
But luckily, Håkon's been in a band that's been struggling for some years already, so he's very appreciative of the setting Enslaved is now, and we have this. It's a good humored thing, like. But you weren't there during the war years, son. He gets that,
Sit him down on your knee and,
yeah, exactly.
give him a little talking to.
Exactly.
He doesn't know a lot about the band history. So we were in Montreal the other day. We were, the screening we had of the movie, the documentary. It was like so fascinating. He was like, I didn't know these things. It was like, whoa, are you in the band?
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it strikes me that might be a good thing from you guys.
It is. For us, it's a really good thing. I think some bands it could be problematic because there would be a lack of what they would perceive as respect or something like that.
Right.
But we like it, so also we can exploit it for our own entertainment. He'll never know when we tell old stories what is true and what is not.
That's handy.
Yeah, very handy.
You can build the myth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've talked about the process of simplification on some level of the music. I'm wondering, is finding that simplification is that, and getting reward out of that, is that maturity for the bands, finding that way to retain the sound and retain the heaviness and make it interesting and yet do less.
Yes, and then of course the obvious question is like, why don't you have like super clever people who start out that way? But I think it just needs to be experienced. I think when you start up, you can have an idea to be simplistic and you still won't really make it. Like simplicity has to be adapted to your concept specifically, I think.
Strikes me that it takes confidence to be simple too.
It's always more difficult to play super slow than super fast.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I could never be the bass player in Earth. I couldn't do it. But that's slow. I mean, you have to be so precise. So it's actually a lot more difficult to play primitive and slow riffs. Listen to AC/DC. I mean, for a drummer, that's hard.
Is Enslaved's music getting more difficult to play as the years go on?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
Like the new album at least is the most difficult thing we've done. It forced us to think about rehearsal in a new old way.
You are rehearsing.
Exactly. It wasn't enough just to like play the same songs and learn the songs. We really had to go and spend some extra time on like find the fine mechanics of the song.
This idea of coming back to where you're from in the music, in the themes, and you know, so much of metal I think is about getting away. Like the last thing you're going to do on your first song you ever wrote is write about where you're from. You're either going to write about the pits of hell or some atrocity in a distant land or just how fucked up things are. What I find interesting about you guys is the sense of like, and you've used this word, rootedness. It's like when I listen to it, I feel like it's coming from somewhere concrete. Is it important to you to be rooted?
As a band, where the band has reached, I think that stage also where it becomes equally important to maintain that sort of homestead connection as it is to explore and go new places.
Yeah.
To be able to understand someone else, you need to first start with yourself. You know, if you don't know where you're coming from yourself, I mean, it's impossible to understand any other cultures, really. So it's very important.
So you guys are moving to LA soon, and you know.
Yeah.
But I think I'd die living in LA after like 2 months. I can handle it.
We're based around Bergen. He lived outside of Bergen. That was too much for him, so now he moved further away, back to his rural upbringings.
It's like 500 people living in the whole community. It's like nothing, you know.
Back to the roots.
Appreciate the conversation. Thanks,
Likewise,
as always.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you for your time.